13 separate pieces of footage, one missing young man, and a timeline that keeps splitting further apart the closer anyone looks at it. Since our last update on the death of Nolan Wells, new arrests, a disputed fundraiser, a wave of amateur photo detective work, and an independent report from search and rescue volunteers have all surfaced, each one claiming to move this case closer to an answer. Tonight we're going to walk through every one of them, show you the actual footage behind each claim, and separate what's been verified from what's simply being argued about online. By the end, you'll understand exactly why, months later, no one has been charged in Nolan's death, and why so many competing narratives are still fighting for the same conclusion. Let's start with the headline that looked for a moment like real progress. 3 people have now been arrested in connection with this case. That sentence needs immediate context because none of these arrests involve what actually happened to Nolan on Horn Island. Every one of them involves people accused of directing hostility at others connected to the investigation. According to federal authorities, an individual from California was charged after allegedly sending intimidating messages to Judge Ashley Cole, Warren Hudson's stepmother. A second individual from Ohio was charged over alleged threats made against government offices tied to the case. A third, from Illinois, was arrested for allegedly targeting witnesses and their families directly. To be clear, none of the 3 arrests relate to how Nolan died. Authorities have confirmed no one has been charged in connection with his death, and that investigation remains open. What these arrests tell us instead is how combustible this case has become. Combustible enough that federal agents are now making arrests over conduct aimed at a judge, government buildings, and private citizens who had nothing to do with the original tragedy. While those arrests dominated headlines, a second story was developing quietly. A Give, Send, Go campaign launched by Dr. Benjamin Hudson, Warren Hudson's father, meant to fund a legal defense for 3 young men who were with Nolan that day: Warren Hudson, Jack Patillo, and Morgan Seymour. The campaign states 2 goals. First, defend the 3 against wrongful death claims being pursued by attorney Ben Crump. Second, pursue action against anyone the family considers to have slandered their names. What stood out to a lot of people watching this unfold was the timing. Legal representation for these 3 young men was locked in remarkably early, before the public conversation had even taken shape. Meanwhile, Nolan's own family has been raising money through a separate GoFundMe, covering funeral costs and legal fees. Now a second, entirely different campaign exists, asking the public to help fund the defense of some of the very people who were with Nolan and made it home that night. Nolan is the reason the public knows most of these names at all. He's also the one who didn't survive. That doesn't make anyone guilty. It just makes for one of the more uncomfortable optics this case has produced. One name kept surfacing above almost every other throughout this case: Bart Edmonston, a college athlete whose connection to the story spread rapidly online. Eventually, the pressure became loud enough that his university addressed it directly.
Regarding the tragic death of Nolan Wells in Mississippi and the very public social media link to one of our players, Bart Edmonston, at no time since July 4th has we been aware in any way, shape, or form, and has it come to our attention, that Bart Edmonston has been a suspect, ever been a suspect, or currently is a suspect. We have no information that has ever linked him to this, okay? And so that's where that...
Here's how the program addressed it, on the record, in its own words. That's about as unambiguous as an institutional statement gets. According to the program, Bart Edmonston has never been flagged to them as a suspect, in any capacity, and doesn't currently have a criminal defense attorney. His family retained attorney Russell Latino for one specific purpose: fighting defamation, not fighting criminal charges. That's a distinction that's gotten lost in a lot of the online conversation. Almost from the beginning, one name kept anchoring every version of this case: Katie, the young woman Nolan was reportedly last seen with. Her sister Gracie came forward early, insisting Katie made it home safely that night on a different boat entirely.
Nolan was sitting by the boat with that Katie girl.
This is the exact moment her name became inseparable from Nolan's disappearance. That single soundbite is really where this entire thread of the case begins. From that moment forward, anyone trying to reconstruct Nolan's final hours has had to reckon with Katie's account and with the growing number of amateur investigators determined to test it. Weeks after Katie's sister spoke publicly, photos began circulating showing Katie at a separate gathering after 4:31 p.m., the time investigators say the boat carrying Nolan's friends had already left the island. On its face, that timestamp seemed to support the idea that she was never with the group during the incident on the water. Then independent online investigators started picking the photos apart.
About those pictures that kept bothering me. Several of those pictures were extremely dark and somewhat distorted, making certain details difficult to see. One of those details was Katie's hat. You couldn't clearly make it out in the original photo, but once the image is brightened and the contrast is adjusted, you can clearly see what appears to be Katie wearing a hat alongside with her turquoise bikini. And who is this right here? The same thing you see in her hat right here is the same thing you see in her hat right here. As the Titanic was sinking and they didn't need the Coast Guard because the grandfather Jerry said they didn't, it looks like we have someone on the boat wearing the same color bikini as someone that said they got on another boat.
Here's the comparison that first sparked this entire theory. We have to be careful here. Adjusting brightness and contrast on a compressed social media photo can reveal genuine detail, but it can just as easily produce a misleading match. This is not forensic image authentication. It's a private citizen's own visual comparison, and it hasn't been confirmed by anyone with the training or the equipment to verify it properly. That didn't stop the theory from spreading further.
Dry snitched on those boys and y'all didn't even notice. Let me break it down for you because here we've got the Snapchats from Katie, right? You're gonna notice her teal swimsuit. Right here we're gonna notice a striped swimsuit. In this video from the three boats, you're gonna see Bart's boat, and in this corner you're gonna see a girl in a striped swimsuit right here, and then right next to her with the same hair is a girl in a teal blue swimsuit. Katie is on Bart's boat in this picture. But wait, they tried to be real clever playing with the lighting on this. Hopefully you got your brightness turned all the way up because you'll notice Katie is wearing a white hat. Now here we've got the picture from the tow, right? Teal swimsuit, white hat. Oh, but that's not all. Again, hope you've got your brightness turned all the way up because here we've got somebody in red swim trunks. Oh, and would you look at that? Red swim trunks. Here he is on the shore next to Nolan after the fight with Tristan. Now, I'm getting mass reported, by the way, so my page might disappear any second. Y'all remember the fight video? In the background, I found a man who looks suspiciously like Grandpa Jerry. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that it is him. I'm just saying. Seems to have a very unique, pectoral shape. And obviously this picture is from a couple years ago because there's Wyatt. But I am not done, folks. Because the same time she dropped these Snapchats, she said that she allegedly got a ride with someone named Marty McGrath between 5:34 and 5:44. Oh, and wouldn't you know it, the co-owner of the Biloxi Bay RV Resort and Marina in St. Martin is co-owned by a man named Marty McGrath. Here's the marina, and here's how far away it is from his buddy's grandparents' house, the one they went back and forth to like 4 or 5 times after they came in. But you may also remember from the report that after leaving the grandparents' house, the boat came southwest towards St. Martin's Bayou. Well, there's St. Martin, so I'm gonna assume that this is the bayou. Now, would this happen to be a Marty McGrath Jr., or was it the actual Marty McGrath?
A second creator took that theory even further, laying out a side-by-side comparison frame by frame. Whatever you make of that comparison, it's important to say plainly, none of this has been verified by investigators, and Katie herself has never addressed these claims publicly in detail. What started as photo analysis eventually escalated into something far less responsible, personal messaging aimed directly at a private individual who, by every public account, is not a suspect in anything. That's worth remembering before treating any of this as settled fact. If you're the kind of viewer who wants a documentary breakdown that treats claims like this with real scrutiny instead of repeating them as fact, that's exactly the standard we hold ourselves to here. Subscribing means you get every update on this case delivered the same way, clearly sourced and clearly separated from speculation. If you've followed our earlier coverage, you already know about the disputed distress call recording from the sinking boat off Horn Island. That controversy hasn't faded. If anything, it's multiplied, with a second, independently produced enhancement now circulating.
Here, another version.
You can see that I have the CTO channel completely muted, so we're only listening to the callers. Then I go through and simply raise the volume of all of the chatter we hear at the beginning of the call.
Hey, we're at the west tip of Horn, and our bilge pump stopped working. We're sinking. Can you all please come? We have a membership. Hey, up! Shut the f*** up! Damn it, Bart!
Susan, that was enhanced by my producer, Sydney. I know her like that. I asked her, enhance it the best you can. She, again, has no interest in the outcome of this case.
Here's a second attempt at isolating that same background audio, produced entirely independently of the original enhancement. The person behind this version has said she has no personal stake in how this case resolves, and simply raised the volume of the background chatter using standard editing tools. That matters, because what listeners claim to hear in that chatter has become one of the most contested pieces of evidence in the entire case.
I see two girls, one on the left in a red, white, and blue bikini, and one in the outfit that looks like the one that Katie had on. And I don't know about you, but I hear two distinct female voices. I heard, probably need to cover it up. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I will let you do it. Then I heard, oh shit, you killed him? I killed him. Then I heard, get in this fucking empty seat. I'm sinking.
Here's how one listener described what she believed she heard buried in that same recording. We want to be extremely direct about this. Those interpretations are unverified, deeply disputed, and have not been confirmed by any forensic audio analysis. Human hearing is remarkably good at forcing language out of degraded, distorted sound, whether or not that language is actually there. Repeating specific disputed phrases as though they're established fact does real harm to real people, so we're not going to do that here. What we can say is that this recording remains contested, and until an actual forensic lab weighs in, every interpretation of it stays exactly that, an interpretation, not a finding. Away from the audio and photo disputes, there's a piece of this story that's been drowned out by all the noise, and it deserves real attention. The actual mechanical sequence that caused the boat to start taking on water.
We figured out if you held the manual trim on the motor will stay in the water even when you start to accelerate. Because when my buddy would put the boat in gear and forward, the motor would come right back up. So it trimmed down, but then it'd come right back up when you went to go put it in forward and drive off. So
here's how one passenger aboard the boat described exactly what went wrong. In plain terms, when a boat's trim is left down instead of raised during acceleration, the bow struggles to rise properly, and water already pooled in the hull surges backward toward the stern. That's a real, well-understood mechanical failure mode, not a mysterious malfunction.
When you trim down the motor to get it on the right plane, that means that you drop the bow. This is how you are supposed to get the actual boat from being completely still to an accelerated speed fast. That they left the trim down when trying to accelerate off the island at a very fast speed, and this is what blew the bilge pump. If the trim is not up when you try to take down, it causes water to back up in the bilge.
Because there was so much water in the back of the boat that when my buddy had it pinned out all the way, trying to go as fast as we can, and the boat was still sitting like this on the water. Wouldn't even plane out. So we had to move all the way to the front of the boat.
The trim is left up, the bow shoots high into the air during acceleration, forcing all loose bilge water to rush to the very back of the hull. This is why they all tried to do the emergency maneuver where they move forward. This traps water in the boat and specifically at the bilge pump. Did an emergency remover that everyone knows about, and this fucked up the bilge pump and it started to take on water. Bilge pump wasn't an issue until they made it a quarter mile offshore, like he said, at 40 miles per hour, because they didn't take the emergency brake, and the maneuver that they used to try to get the bow back up fucked everything up on the boat. Question is, what type of panic or event ensued that y'all were moving so fast, the boys who've known boats since they were children, that y'all forgot to do the simplest thing when trying to accelerate from a stop on a boat that everyone knows when you're speeding?
Here's a second account of that same moment, along with a breakdown of exactly why it caused the pump to fail. Passengers reportedly rushed to the front of the boat as an improvised fix, trying to help the vessel plane correctly and push the water back where it belonged. What's still unclear is what, if anything, happened in the moments before that rushed acceleration severe enough to overwhelm the pump in the first place. Experienced boaters don't usually make a mistake like this on a calm day. Something prompted the hurry.
Yeah, I just actually got off the phone with his grandpa, who I'm guessing is the owner of the boat. And he said,
Okay.
I just hung up with him. He said that they don't need any help right now, but if something changes, he'll call me back.
And here's the actual call in which the boat's owner was reportedly asked if help was needed. According to that call, the response was that help wasn't needed unless the situation changed. Whether that reflects genuine confidence the problem was under control or something else entirely remains an open question nobody has definitively answered. If there's one development that actually moves this case forward instead of just generating noise, it's this one. The Cajun Navy, the volunteer search and rescue organization involved since the earliest hours of the search, has released an independent analytical report reconstructing exactly how multiple boats were positioned that afternoon.
So the Cajun Navy released an independent analytical report, and this report gives us a first-hand look at a couple of things that I think are extremely important. For starters, we have new photographs showing the positioning of several of these boats while they were out at Horn Island. And instead of simply looking at one picture in isolation, this report compares the available photos, videos, coordinates, and statements to try to piece together how these boats were positioned, who was aboard them, when did the Triton begin taking on water, and most importantly, what happened between Nolan's last independently corroborated sighting and the 4:31 departure of the boat that Nolan arrived at Horn Island on. And that last question is huge because the report identifies that period as a material gap in the timeline. In other words, based on the evidence provided for this analysis, there is not yet a continuous, independently corroborated account showing exactly where Nolan was, who he was with, and what was happening in those crucial moments leading up to the 4:31 departure. So we have to the left the Triton, in the middle Warren is on the Palm Beach, and to the right we have Bart's boat, which is the Garmin. So essentially what this document is attempting to do is to point out the last sighting of Nolan and find out what changed in between that time. So we have boat 1 to the left, then we have boat X, boat 2, boat 3, and this view is coming from Warren on the Palm Beach.
Then Wyatt went and put his smaller boat in the water, which is the Palm Beach.
Y'all remember Wyatt's family owns the Titanic, aka the Triton, as well as the Palm Beach. So the second picture is the point of view of boat 1. Boat 1 we have there, boat 2, boat 3. We do not have boat X, and this is during the fight video. They basically want to know, why did boat X move? What was its destination? Who were the occupants? And whether the movement had anything to do with Nolan's disappearance. So here, once again, we have the point of view from boat number 1. We see boat 2. We see boat 3. This is the fight video. So here we have Nolan and I believe Jax. Behind Nolan, we have boat number 2 and boat number 3, which is hidden. And then we also have the Palm Beach. So this report calls the period immediately before the reported 431 departure of the Triton a critical missing piece. It specifically says investigators need to identify boat X and find out if it had anything to do with Nolan's disappearance. One other thing I want to bring up.
Were there at least 5 everyone that was on our boat right there, because the Palm Beach had already left. My buddy went ahead and went home on the Palm Beach, and 3 guys on the way back, and no one went.
So if we came with 3 boats, why was the Palm Beach left out, and who was the buddy that left with it? This is why I said showing everyone load up on the boat at Jax Patalo's grandparents' home really was insignificant, because all of the drama happened after 431. I want to see which boats returned. How were the kids looking? How frantic they were acting? Who all came back? What were they picking up and putting on the boat, or taking off the boat for that matter, when they kept making those 3 to 4 trips to the Fort Bayou boat line?
Here's the exact moment the report identifies its most significant unanswered question. According to that report, there were at least 3 identified boats near Nolan that afternoon: the Triton, the Palm Beach, and a 3rd vessel belonging to another friend, plus a 4th unidentified boat the report simply calls Boat X. Investigators still need to determine who was aboard it, where it went, and whether its movement connects to Nolan's disappearance at all. A 4th boat, unaccounted for in nearly every public timeline, moving through the exact window investigators consider most critical. Until Boat X is identified, that gap remains exactly what the report calls it: a critical missing piece. As if the boat timeline weren't tangled enough, several witness accounts posted online in recent weeks have directly contradicted each other.
Then we have this. This is a post from one of the departure witness statements that says this: one of my passengers is pretty certain he was part of the group that was almost fighting around 5 p.m. The Bertram with the blue top that I posted left shortly after that and pretty fast. So he obviously thought he saw Nolan and the group fighting at 5 o'clock. This woman responded and she said, "Matthew Lamp, sir, you are sadly mistaken. We are the group you yelled at as you pulled up thinking we were going to hit you, and we weren't. We were paying attention." Totally different kid was with us. I was with the Bertram boat and we had no affiliation with him. We hate to hear this has happened. This causes more issues for the people in charge trying to find this baby, and it creates stories that are fake. We did speak to the boys, and at the moment he did have an entire vodka bottle in his hand. You need to revamp your statement and not put blame towards anyone. We don't even know what happened, but I will tell you, you are mistaken. Give the cops my name. I will tell them who we really had on our boat.
Here's one witness's original account, followed almost immediately by a firm public correction from someone who says she was actually on that boat. That kind of correction is a useful reminder of how easily a well-meaning witness can misread a distant moment of tension on a crowded stretch of water filled with overlapping boats and overlapping friend groups. Not every viral claim survives contact with the people who were actually there.
Sam here with a Nolan Xavier Wells update, and a TikToker named Faith Lauren, who claims to have been on Horn Island, said she saw an altercation between Nolan and some other people, and this is her statement. This is all allegedly. I cannot verify it, but I thought it was interesting information. Check it out. She says, "I have not spoken publicly about this before, but I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells from a boat nearby. What I saw has stayed with me, and I believe it's important information. I have provided or intend to provide my account to the appropriate investigators because Nolan's family deserves the truth. Out of respect for the ongoing investigation, I won't speculate beyond what I personally observed. I am providing this statement based on what I personally observed. While I was on the boat near the area, I witnessed an altercation involving Nolan Wells and several other individuals. I saw what appeared to be an argument that escalated after there was a dispute involving Nolan's phone. I heard Nolan yelling for his phone to be returned. The argument continued after the group reached shore, and I observed a physical fight involving Nolan and multiple people. I also observed a young woman telling them to stop. At that point, I left the area because the situation had appeared to be getting worse. I did not remain long enough to witness what happened afterward. Everything beyond what I personally observed would be speculation, so I cannot honestly say what occurred after I left.
Here's a separate account from someone who says she witnessed part of what happened firsthand. To be clear, this account has not been independently verified. It comes from a single social media user whose identity and footage have themselves drawn scrutiny online and whose claims investigators have not confirmed. We're including it because it's part of the public record of competing claims, not because it's been established as fact. Later portions of this same video escalate into direct threats against a named individual, language we're not going to feature here, because amplifying threats isn't reporting, it's just adding to the danger. The final development brings this story back to where it started, with Nolan's own mother, Christine Wells Wansley.
I'm going to leave you with this. Yesterday, Ben Crump posted 1 month ago, Christine Wells Wansley lost her son, Nolan. Now someone is trying to take her nursing license anonymously without the courage to put a name on it. This is intimidation. This is a warning shot meant to silence a grieving mother who is simply asking what happened to her child. We will not let it stand. Christine served her patients for years without a single complaint to the board. The only thing that changed is that she started asking questions. And then Christine said the case has been closed by the MSBON. Thank you to all those who have constantly.
Here's how the family's attorney described what happened next. According to Christine, she served patients for years without a single complaint filed against her, until she began publicly asking questions about her son's death. The state nursing board has since closed that complaint without action, but the timing alone, a licensing challenge surfacing only after she started speaking out, is difficult to read as coincidence. So here's where this case actually sits, stripped down to what's confirmed. 3 people face federal charges over conduct connected to this case, none of it related to Nolan's death itself. No one has been charged in connection with how Nolan died. 2 competing fundraisers exist side by side. A university has stated it has no information connecting one of its athletes to any suspicion in this case. Photo and audio analysis continues to circulate, none of it independently verified. A detailed mechanical account explains how the boat likely sank, though it doesn't explain what happened moments before the rushed departure that caused it. An independent search and rescue report has identified a critical, unresolved gap in the timeline, centered on an unidentified 4th boat. Multiple witness accounts contradict each other, with at least one publicly retracted, and Nolan's mother is fighting on 2 fronts at once. Before we close this out, if this kind of careful, source-by-source breakdown is what you come here for, this is the moment to subscribe. Cases like this move in bursts, quiet for weeks and then suddenly flooded with new footage and new claims all at once. Subscribing means you won't have to sort through unreliable threads yourself. You'll get it here, organized and clearly sourced, the moment it happens. Here's what we know for certain. 3 arrests have been made over conduct connected to this case, none tied to Nolan's death. No charges have been filed regarding how he actually died. A legal defense fund exists for 3 of the young men who were with him, alongside the ongoing fundraiser for Nolan's own family. A university has stated it has no information linking one of its athletes to the case as a suspect, and an independent report has identified a specific, unresolved gap in the timeline, centered on an unaccounted-for 4th boat. Here's what remains unknown. Whether any of the disputed photo comparisons involving Katie hold up under real scrutiny, whether either enhanced audio recording captures anything a forensic lab would actually confirm, who was aboard Boat X, and whether its movements connect to Nolan's disappearance at all. And still, after every arrest, every fundraiser, every disputed photo and recording, the same question this case started with. What actually happened to Nolan Wells in the hours before his friends realized he was gone? If additional records, forensic findings, or official updates become public, they'll provide a clearer understanding of what happened. Until then, the evidence that has been released can only answer part of the story. If you appreciate documentary coverage that separates verified fact from online speculation, subscribe and turn on notifications, because this case is far from finished, and neither are we.